After spending 11 long years in prison, a man is finally free. But little did he know, his release would lead to a tragic twist for his wife. The moment he stepped out, he was carrying more than just the weight of his past. His return was meant to be a fresh start, but it quickly turned into a nightmare for his wife, which he discovered he had unknowingly infected her with HIV. Devastated, she faced an unimaginable choice. How would she react to this betrayal? What would she do next? In this story, we dive deep into the raw emotions, the heart-wrenching decision that followed, and the powerful actions that would forever change their lives. Stay tuned to find out what happened next and how love, trust, and anger collide in a shocking turn of events. For years, his wife had waited, holding on to the hope that one day he would come home. They had been high school sweethearts, planning their future together until his sudden arrest shattered their lives. While he was behind bars, she tried to move on, but her love for him never faded. She visited him regularly, believing in his innocence, convinced that once out, they could rebuild everything. But the man who returned was not the same one who had left. The years in prison had changed him in ways she couldn't yet understand. When the truth finally came to light, it felt like her entire world crumbled. How could he have done this to her? Her anger and hurt were overwhelming, but she couldn't let go of the part of her that still wanted to help him. Now she faced a decision no one should ever have to make. Would she stand by him or walk away forever? As days passed, the reality of the situation began to settle in. His wife, overwhelmed with confusion and betrayal, started distancing herself emotionally. The man who had once been her protector, her partner, was now the source of her deepest pain. She couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right. Despite the years of letters, phone calls, and promises of change, he had come back with a secret that had already infected her. She sought medical advice, her fear growing as the tests confirmed the worst. She was HIV positive. The anger inside her was consuming, but it was more than just the disease. It was the shattered trust, the broken promises, and the haunting thought that he might have known and not said a word. He, too, was struggling with guilt, though he didn't show it. He had been in prison for so long, wrapped in his own survival, that he hadn't fully considered the consequences of his actions. But now he had to face the woman he loved, the woman he had betrayed in the worst possible way. Would she ever forgive him? Could she find it in her heart to trust him again, even as she fought for her own health and future? As the days turned into weeks, the tension between them grew. They both had so many unanswered questions, but neither knew where to start. She felt trapped between love and resentment, between wanting to believe in their future and the haunting reality of his past. Meanwhile, he was caught in a whirlwind of regret, desperately trying to show her that he was sorry, but unsure if it was even possible to repair the damage. With every passing day, the weight of their fractured relationship seemed heavier, and the distance between them seemed impossible to bridge. Would they ever find a way back to each other, or was this the end of everything they had built? The silence between them was deafening. His wife barely spoke to him, her eyes filled with a mixture of disbelief and hurt whenever she looked his way. Each conversation felt like a battlefield, and every word he spoke only seemed to dig the wound deeper. He had tried everything: apologies, promises to change, even seeking help. But nothing seemed to ease the tension. He couldn't erase the look in her eyes, the one that spoke volumes about the betrayal she felt. His heart ached, not just for the love they had lost, but for the fear of what might be coming next. She couldn't look at him the same way anymore. Each time she remembered the life they had before, it felt like a lie. But it wasn't just his actions that haunted her. It was the deep, unresolved anger she couldn't let go of. She knew she had to make a decision, either to forgive him and try to heal, or to cut him out of her life for good. But the thought of forgiveness seemed impossible. How could she ever forgive someone who had caused her so much pain, so much uncertainty? Her mind raced, consumed by the thoughts of what the future held. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw the man she had once loved. But now he was a stranger, and she was unsure of who he truly was. There was one final test, one last attempt at finding closure. A confrontation that would force both of them to face the truth. No more hiding, no more pretending. It was time to confront the depth of their pain and figure out if there was any way to move forward, or if their story had come to an irreversible end. But would she have the strength to face him? Would he finally be honest with her? The answers were unclear, but the moment of truth was rapidly approaching, and neither of them knew if they would be able to survive it. As the confrontation drew nearer, her emotions were a tangled mess. She couldn't stop thinking about their life together, the shared memories, the laughter, the dreams they once had. But the pain was too much. Each day, she felt more and more disconnected from the person she had married. But just as she was about to make the decision to confront him once and for all, something unexpected happened. She received a phone call from the doctor that would change everything. The results of her last HIV test had come back, but they weren't what she had anticipated. The doctor's voice was calm, but there was a hint of urgency. Her mind raced as he explained that there had been a mix-up in the lab results. She wasn't infected with HIV, as she had feared. Instead, the test showed that she was perfectly healthy. Shock and relief flooded over her, but with it came a deep sense of confusion. If she didn't have the virus, then how could she have been so certain? Had she misunderstood the signs? And what about her husband? Had he lied to her about his own status? In a daze, she hung up the phone, her thoughts swirling. The betrayal she had been so sure of suddenly seemed unclear. Had he been hiding the truth from her all along, or was there something else at play? Could the years of separation and his release from prison have changed him so much that she couldn't recognize him anymore? The questions were piling up, and now the stakes were higher than ever. What was his real secret? The thought of him carrying such a heavy burden was too much to bear, but she couldn't ignore the possibility that everything she thought she knew about him might be a lie. The weight of her uncertainty felt heavier than the anger she had carried for weeks. She knew she needed answers, but she was terrified of what they might reveal. The tension between them had reached a boiling point, and it seemed like only one thing was certain. This confrontation would not end how she expected. That night, she couldn't wait any longer. The need for closure was consuming her. She asked him to meet her at the house, and as he walked in, she felt the weight of the moment settle in her. Her hands shook as the truth sank in. The man she had loved, the man she had thought to be the cause of her pain, had never been the one to infect her. It had been the result of a completely different error. But just as quickly as the relief washed over her, a wave of confusion and doubt took its place. What had they really been through all this time? How much of their pain had been built on misunderstandings, on assumptions they both made without knowing the full story? In that moment, she understood something far more important than just the truth of their health. Both of them had been prisoners, not of the law, but of the lies they had told themselves about their lives, their future, and the other person. As they sat in the heavy silence that followed the final revelation, it was clear that they still had a long way to go. But in the end, the twist was clear. Sometimes the real damage comes not from the truth, but from the things we never knew we didn't understand. In the days that followed, the couple slowly began to rebuild, though the path was far from easy. The tension between them didn't disappear overnight, but with each conversation, they began to find a new understanding. The mistakes they had both made, the assumptions, the misunderstandings, they started to see how these had shaped their relationship in ways neither had expected.